your real mahut, your real essence is spiritual, then you're showing that your true father is always a Kadosh Baruch Hu.
Wherever you get your podcasts from, or our own website, prismoftorah.com. This is the Prism of Torah with Rabbi Aaron Prisman. This week, Parshas Shoftim. Who are you?
The Parsha starts off saying, Shoftim v'shoitrim titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha, which means judges and police officers you should put around all your gates in order so that they can judge the nation and enforce whatever rule came out of the judgment with the police officers. There's a very famous shla on this pasuk, which I mentioned several years ago. And I think he says, there's another way you can learn the pasuk. There's a hint over here to something else. As we know, Pardes, the Torah can be deciphered in more than one way. Pshat, Remez, Drash, Soid. And over here, the trigger for realizing there's a hint is because it says in plural, Shoftim v'shoitrim, judges and police officers you should put. And then it says Titen lecha, singular. Why singular? Titnu lachem. And also later on in the parsha, all kinds of laws that are for the judges, it says them in a singular form. Why is it in a singular form? It's for all the judges. Elamai, there's a hint over here. And I think that's where the shla is coming from. As the Rav Eliyahu Lopian brings out in his famous sefer Lev Eliyahu, which is the following. We're not only talking about the regular policemen and judges that we have for all the nation, but rather every person, every singular person also should create and have judges and police officers also in every gate that he has. What is the gate of a person? So the shla says it's all the holes of a person, which are the eyes, the nose, the ears, the mouth, etc. What does this mean? So Rav Eliyahu Lopian explains and brings all kinds of chazals that show you that through the eyes a person can sin. There's many chazals that we mentioned in the past about them, that a person sees something and then it triggers him to do an aveira. And also through speaking, things that are not allowed to be spoken about, like lashon hara and nibul peh and other things like that, and listening to things they're not allowed to listen to, etc., etc. All those, you should have a judge around those gates. Why? To decipher, wait a second, am I supposed to try to listen to this? Or is it not Ratzon Hashem for me to listen to this? A judge should decide that for you. Should I speak like this or should I not speak like this? Around each gate that a person has in his body, you should have a judge telling you if the right thing to do is yes, to use the mouth for example, or no, not to use it. And who is that judge? So Rav Eliyahu Lopian says that is the nefesh that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. Like it says, Vayitzer Hashem Elokim es ha'adam, Vayi Adam lenefesh chaya. We know the famous Onkelos over there that he translated to be leruach mimalelo. That is the whole essence of the Adam, the person, that the nefesh that comes from the neshama, it should decide yes to speak, no to speak, yes to listen, not to listen. That's what the psukim over here are hinting to us. Goes on, Rav Eliyahu Lopian to explain to us. So that's the shofet. Who? That's the judge. Who is the police officer to enforce this decision that your nefesh made based on what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to do, your seichel? What is the decision after your mind realizes this is Ratzon Hashem? That the only true police officer in you is, like we mentioned in the past, is Yirat Shamayim. Yiras Hashem. When you have a fear of Hashem, we know there's two levels of fear. There's the lower level of fear, literally fearing Hashem, but also there's awe, to be in awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That will ensure that you will abide by what your seichel, your mind, and your nefesh told you to do. That brings us to the famous Shabbos, the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis, that a person that learns Torah, i.e., he has the mind and knowledge to know when it is right or wrong to do something, but if he doesn't have Yiras Shamayim that we're talking about, then it's similar to a person that they gave him the keys for the inner room, but not the keys for the outer room. So he can't get there, he can't do the right thing. So first of all, this is a very fitting message that we should get dafka during this time of Elul, because it is during this time that we have to prepare and work on ourselves on getting closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we have to ensure that we have our judges and our police officers getting ready, especially now, to get ready for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. But I want to add another idea that I heard from a friend of mine. He happens to be my neighbor, Rabbi Rosenfeld Shlita, which is another question that seemingly has nothing to do with what we spoke about until now, but I think you can connect the answer, and it also connects to Elul, so I would like to share it with you. The Gemara in Kiddushin, Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, brings a famous machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda about are Bnei Yisrael still called the sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu after they sin and repeat their sins. The Gemara literally says that when we act like children, then we're called children. But we don't act like children, we're not called children. Ad Kan, that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Meir says and brings psukim to support his opinion, no. We're always, no matter what we do, we're called sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, the obvious question is, we understand Rabbi Meir's opinion that says we're always called Banim, because once you're a son of someone, you're always a son of someone. How can you say we're not sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? If we really are sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then we're sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's pshat in Rabbi Yehuda? So my friend, Rabbi Rosenfeld Shlita, wanted to say the following, something that he saw, that perhaps the answer is hidden in another Gemara. The Gemara in Nida and in other places says that there's three partners in the creation of a person. The father, the mother, and of course HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But how does that work? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that gives the spiritual side of a person, the neshama. Whereas the father and mother, they are the ones that give over the creation of the child. They give the parts that are the body parts, the body side of the person, not the neshama, not the spiritual side, but the physical side. Which is very interesting. On that Gemara over there in Nida, the Ben Yoyada says that Adam, which is a person, translated to a person, Adam has the same numerical value, gematria, as Av plus M, father and mother. They both are the numerical value of 44. Adam is 44, and Av is 3, M is 41, also together 44. And what's Adam? Aleph Daled Mem. What's Aleph? Echad mi yodea, Echad HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's Hashem. And Daled and Mem, the blood, which represents the main ingredient that the body is made of, which is blood, that comes from the father and mother. So also over here you see the hint that a person is composed of a combination from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and from the father and mother. Based on this, as we are calling this Dvar Torah, who are you? Meaning, depending on how you act, if you connect more to your spiritual side, then you're showing that your true father is always HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yes, you have a father and mother, and of course they're your father and mother from certain perspectives. But really, your real mahut, your real essence, is spiritual, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu is your father, and therefore you're HaKadosh Baruch Hu's child as well. However, when a person, and this is the connection to what we said previously, he doesn't have judges and policemen around all his gates to ensure he always goes in the path of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and acts and leads his life in a spiritual sense, then he's showing that he's not really so much connected to his spiritual side, which came from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So his real only parent, he's showing by the way he's living his life, are his parents. Mimele, you can already start to understand where Rabbi Yehuda is coming from. Because a person that acts his life totally physical and lets his Yetzer Hara get him to go and run after his taivas all the time, that's a person that's kind of voting in the way he's living his life, that his parents are really the only father he has, and not HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Rabbi Meir says, no, there's always that spark of Yiddishkeit in a person, and he's always called the son of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's never late to do tshuva, etc., etc. So also this is an idea, I think, that we have to try to implement in our lives, especially during this time as we get prepared for Rosh Hashanah, where we know the most important, if you ask me what's the most important theme of Rosh Hashanah, is to realize that we're going into Judgment Day, but the day is based on where we're holding in our hearts. Ba'asher hu sham, which is another shir we spoke about, but Ba'asher hu sham, a person's being judged, what does he hold right now in his heart? If you are clinching to make that decision right now in your heart with a true heart, and only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that, he knows exactly what's in our hearts, and we tell ourselves, that's it, we really want to fight off the Yetzer Hara, we're going to have these policemen and the judges and the policemen around all our gates trying to do always the best, what Ratzon Hashem is, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will judge us favorably as well, because it's based on that decision in our hearts that we're making. I said this Vartura over to a friend of mine, of Daniel Stolbach Shlita, and he wanted to add something that I think is very fitting, because it's also to do with our Parsha, and it's also to do with Elul. If you look in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, he brings down that Elul has a lot of acronyms, a lot of simonim. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch brings 4 of them, but I know there's many more. One of them is Anilo Dediva Dedili, which represents a special closeness to Hashem. One comes from that, the Anilo Doidi comes from Shir Hashirim, then from Megillas Esther, that there's an idea of Ish Lereu Matanois Le'Evyonim. That's also Rashi Tevois Elul, right? Each word Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed. And then there's another pasuk that's Umal Hashem es levavchem ve'es levav zarechem. So also Rashi Tevois Elul says the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, each pasuk represents a different theme about Elul. The first one, Anilo Dili, represents the idea of tefillah, to give presents to your friend, Matanos Le'Evyonim, not just presents, Matanos Le'Evyonim, like we do in Purim, that represents to giving the needy tzedakah. And the last one, to get close to Hashem, to remove the olaf and the lev, that represents the idea of tshuva. That's mamash gevaldik, very representative of Elul. But then the Arizal, and he brings it also, the Arizal says another one, that Rashi Tevis, that is a pasuk that seemingly has no shaykhis to Elul. It's to do with the Arei Miklat. We know the Arei Miklat, when a person killed someone by accident, so he can run to special areas in the country and hide there and no one can do anything to him. That protects him. On that, the Arizal says, what does this have to do with Elul? And the answer is because Elul also acts like that for us. Because even though the whole year round we sinned, but of course, we didn't sin on purpose, so also too, Elul acts as a place, in time at least, that it's being protected, because Hashem's coming closer to us, we have a bit better, an amazing, a special opportunity to do tshuva, so it's like, from a certain perspective, we're also in one of these camps that no one can do anything to us. Comes Moshe Shapira Tatzal, and he comes to explain a question he has. He says, there's many very important times during the year in Yiddishkeit. Why Dafka Elul this month has so many remozim, so many simanim? What's going on? And he says a very, very interesting answer. He says, because the Arizal brings this idea that one of the remozim of Elul has to do with Arei Miklat, which is a city where one can hide when no one's allowed to touch him when he killed someone by accident. So we have to look in the Psukim in the Torah what it says about Arei Miklat. And the Psukim says you better make sure there are signs everywhere so that when a person killed someone and it was by accident, he can now run to one of these cities. So every time you get to a fork in the road, it has to have a clear sign saying, the way to the Ir Miklat is make a right. The way to the Ir Miklat, make a left, etc., etc. So to here, because Elul is such an important thing for us, it's also a place where we should be able to hide from our sins and work on ourselves, to change ourselves, to get closer to Hashem, to get ready for Rosh Hashanah. Then so too over here, we need a lot of signs. And that's why there's so many signs around the idea of Elul. And that answers all the questions. That's what Moshe Shapira Zatzal says. So, Yiratzon, that will take all these ideas from the Parsha, that maybe Lo Bichdi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrated that this Parsha will be always in the time of Elul, because it's a time to prepare ourselves, to make a change of heart, to do our best, to have officers, judges and officers to ensure we're always going the path of Hashem, doing Ratzon Hashem, realizing that Elul is a huge opportunity for us to get closer to Hashem. It's mamish like an ir miklat for us. V'yeh Ratzon that will be all be zoiche by doing this avodah, getting closer to Hashem and trying to change ourselves, to realize that our essence should be the neshama, not chas v'shalom, just the gashmiya side and the physical side of us, but rather the spiritual, or even better, we want to elevate our physical. So our physical side, our gashmiya side, should be bowing down to our spiritual side, that our spiritual side will lead the way, just like we saw Rav Steinman Zatzal lived his life. Everything about him was spiritual, even the physical was spiritual. And we know we'll just end up with the famous mashal that Chazal always give, that you should be ensuring that you're leading the horse and not the horse leading you. The horse represents the bodily side of a person. The netiyah, the natural way the body wants to go, is usually the opposite of where HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to go. That's neshama. The neshama and the body are opposites. So who's gonna decide who goes where? Is the horse gonna decide where to lead the person sitting on the horse, where obviously the person represents the neshama, or is the person on the horse, the neshama, will decide and lead the horse to go where he feels is better? Yeh Ratzon that we'll be the ones leading the horse. Have a good Shabbos. And Aksiva Chasima Tova.
Thank you for joining us. This is the Prism of Torah. Visit our website, prismoftorah.com, where you'll find a full archive of hundreds of past Divrei Torah. Subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, and don't forget to share with your friends and family. Sponsorship opportunities are available for all of our episodes. Thank you, Yona Vefa, for your recording equipment. Produced by Eli Podcast Productions.